Are there advantages to aging? Yes, I am Debbi-Jo Horton, and welcome to Advantages to Aging. Join my guests and I as we discuss aging and what makes for a healthy lifestyle, which results in a quality life. Thank you for joining me today. Welcome, listeners, to another episode of Advantages to Aging. Today, we're going to learn all about finances. I know you're thinking, I have heard so many things and I don't know what to do with the information, but trust me, Carrie McPherson of BeaconPoint Financial Advisors has not just a wealth of information, but information you can actually understand. Welcome, Carrie.
Thank you so much for having me, DJ. And I love the name of your podcast because aging is an advantage. Every year that goes by, my body might not agree, but my mind loves being older. I love getting older. So thank you for creating this resource for your listeners.
Oh, thank you. And you're welcome, all of you. And yes, I agree that there are so many advantages to aging because let's face it, if you're not aging, because you're 6 feet under, and we don't want to be having that.
No, definitely not.
So, Carrie, will you just share with our listeners what you see as the biggest financial concern women are facing as they age?
Well, we tend to age longer than our male counterparts. And I know not all of us have a partner of the opposite sex, but for a lot of women, that is a concern. We outlive our partners. And even if we're in a same-sex relationship, one of you is going to outlive the other more often than not. So having that as a primary concern is making sure that we have enough resources set aside and having the right protection in place to make sure that we do have some preparation for the future, because with aging does come some unique challenges. And unfortunately, one of those is the cost of care and who's going to provide that care.
Yes, not only the cost of care in terms of dollars, but also the cost of care in terms of, what are you willing to take on and potentially disrupt your own health and your own peace of mind in order to do it. And those are hard choices. And knowing that, having that worry of having finances kind of off your plate does give you a lot of freedom of choice that you wouldn't necessarily have otherwise. But I know that oftentimes we make mistakes, right? Especially if we're caring for a loved one. It's very emotional, and so you don't always think things through, or even if you do, sometimes you just don't have all of the resources that you could or should have. So what are some of the mistakes that you've come across in your work that people are making when they're planning for retirement and maybe planning for a illness, or maybe not planning for illness, thinking that they're going to be healthy right up to the moment they die?
That's honestly the biggest mistake that I see is people not planning, not preparing, and making the assumption that everything will work out. I'm a planner by nature. That's why it's a perfect role for me to be, in this career path. But having a goal and having a plan on how to get to that goal, and most of us have many different goals and a big web that we kind of walk in, but having a plan in place for how we're going to get to that goal, and also envisioning what does that look like for me, because I work with clients various asset size and net worth that have very different goals, and it's really all a matter of dollars in and dollars out. But being able to visualize how that money works for a unique individual, because we're all unique and our situations and goals are all different, but a lot of times they're the same too. We usually don't want to have to continue to work. I know plenty of people that are very happy, passionate about their careers, but we don't necessarily want to have to keep working. And sometimes we're faced with a situation where we can't work anymore because of a health concern, or we're caring for someone that needs round the clock or more devoted care. So just making sure that we have a plan in place with options, because that gives you the more optimal likelihood to succeed. So really, it's the lack of planning, not seeking professional advice until oftentimes it's too late. I frequently introduce myself to someone and they say, "Oh, Carrie, I wish I met you 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago." It gives us less time to be able to come up with different paths and different solutions. So then it becomes more a conversation if you're really close to retirement or you're already retired, is just readjusting expectations.
That's so good. And options are always a good thing. The more options, the better. Sometimes people don't feel that way because that means they have to make a choice from multiple different things, but options are always good.
Debbi-Jo with Neora. You know what our brand partners love the most about their Neora business? They can do it from anywhere. Think about it. Haven't you always wanted to have your own schedule, be your own boss, maybe even have a global business and be able to run it from your favorite coffee shop or lounging by the pool or seaside, not having to go into the office? We make sure that all of our brand partners have all of the tools they need to run their business while fitting it into their busy lives. So if that's something that you've been curious about, what it might be like for you to be able to do life on your own terms, then I think we need to chat.
Now, I happen to know that you work with a lot of single women, and I know that working with women is your preference, though I know you also have a lot of men who are your clients. But does your advice vary whether you're talking to a single woman or a man or a couple?
It does. It does. It doesn't have to, but I tend to lead where the conversation is leading. But when I'm working with women that happen to be single, we do have different concerns. And I usually lead with estate planning. I'm not an attorney, but I try to help guide the conversation and make sure that they have an attorney that is able to help them design an estate plan that's unique to their needs. So you're right, DJ. I do work a lot with single women, and I do find that my advice tends to differ from when I'm working with a man or a married couple that especially has children. And a lot of that comes into play with the care conversation. Parents oftentimes think that their spouse, their partner, and then their children are going to step in and be able to help them if they become incapacitated or need extra help. Well, a single person, and most of my clients happen to be single women, they don't have that network, that support system that happens naturally in families. And so we have that conversation about what that might look like if you were no longer able to be on your own and care for yourself. What would you, it's not an ideal situation for anyone, so it is a difficult conversation, but what would you envision that to look like? And so then we kind of plan based off of that, making sure that their estate is in order. I always ask the question, do you have an estate plan? And if they don't, I have a great network of attorneys that I can refer my clients to, because I like to, attorneys have different specialties, just like advisors do, different price points. And so I try to make that recommendation so that there's someone that is able to step in and help them if they need it. And more often than not, we're going to need help and support at some point throughout our lives. So that's really the biggest piece. But making sure beneficiary designations are all up to date, making sure your estate actually passes to whom or whatever cause you're most passionate about. So I talk a lot about philanthropic planning and what does your legacy look like? What's most important to you?
All good topics, all good things to be thinking about, whether you're a single woman or a married woman or a man. I won't disagree that men's needs oftentimes are different from women's needs, but there are a lot of resources. And Carrie, I know that you have some phenomenal resources that listeners, you'll be able to find in the show notes. And Carrie, this has been insightful. It has made me start thinking even more about whether or not I really do have all of the things in place that I want to have in place for, for my care and for my loved ones, and making sure that what I want to have happen actually happens. So listeners, I'm hoping that something that you heard today will spur you into action. What step can you take to better understanding your financial security as you age, whether it's retirement, whether it's estate planning, or thinking about what happens if I can no longer take care of myself or my loved one? Thank you so much, Carrie, for being with us today. And be sure that if you're not already a member of our podcast community or the Advantages to Aging Facebook page, be sure to join.
Thanks for having me.
Do you think one of the biggest advantages to aging is all the knowledge we gain along the way? Me too. What did you learn today? Share with me in my Facebook group with the same name as this podcast, Advantages to Aging. Now hit subscribe so you don't miss all the tips to come in future episodes.